Shipping is an essential part of any fandom. It comes from many a place: a desire to see oneself represented better in mainstream media, or a want to see an impossible pairing come to fruition. So naturally, the MCU's Avengers have a whole slew of couples that fans have been pairing since the first Iron Man film came out. And today we're discussing some of those ships with our list of the top 10 Avengers ships. Now, we aren't going to be talking about any of the actual maybe canon ships that the MCU has hinted to over the years. Oh no, friends. These are the ships that are far from being canon. The ones that deep down, y'all would really love to see happen. Or like despise them if they did happen. It's a preference thing, really. In at number 10, Iron Husbands. Rhodey and Tony are a pretty obvious slash ship. The two pals not only care a whole lot about each other, but have some of the best back and forth banter in the MCU. James Rupert Rhodes was introduced in Iron Man, one of Stark's best friends and occasional rivals, and became the liaison between Stark Industries and the US Armed Forces. This eventually leads to Rhodes becoming War Machine after he pops on one of Tony's suits of armor at his birthday party to stop a drunk suited up Tony from potentially hurting partygoers and himself. That little rivalry would expand and resolve, with their friendship continuing to remain a staple in Tony's life throughout the rest of the MCU films. Remember how distraught Tony was when Rhodes was severely injured in Civil War? Aw, heart-wrenching. Plus, who couldn't fall for Don Cheadle? He's like super adorable. And at number 9, Loki. Loki and Agent Coulson is a super minor ship in the MCU, but we had to include it on this list because of how wonderful it is. This ship stems from the moment where Loki killed Coulson during his escape from the helicarrier. Bit of an odd starting point, but considering the lines that Coulson whips out on Loki while he's dying, I can see the chemistry. And what better way to start a ship but with an antagonistic past between the two? He killed Coulson shot him through a wall. Typical roots of a romance, right? That's how most relationships start. Coulson would later be resurrected, and spoilers, after Infinity War, it's uncertain if Loki's death will be a permanent one. So hey, who knows? Maybe these two might cross paths again sometime in the future. Up next, number 8, HAWKSON. Yep, we've got another Coulson ship at this number, this time between him and Hawkeye. Also known as Flint, Clint Barton and Phil Coulson's ship stems from one interaction between the two of them in the MCU films in the first Thor movie, when Phil speaks to Clint over the radio about what he's got eyes on outside of the research center prior to Thor failing to lift his hammer. This got fans thinking that there must be a bigger backstory and some sort of past between the two, with Clint being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Coulson essentially being his and Natasha's handler. Oh, the possibilities. And at number 7, Scarlet America. When watching Captain America's Civil War, one can't help but notice how adamant Steve Rogers is towards everyone giving Wanda Maximoff a chance. Yeah, she's a little unstable. Yeah, she needs to learn how to control her powers better, but regardless, Steve has never treated her like a child and is always in her corner. So, of course, there's a fanship brewing there. And their relationship in the comics has also helped fuel that fire. But in those storylines, Steve broke her heart, and she didn't take it too well, warping reality with her powers in the events leading up to the Avengers Disassembled story event. Up next, number 6, Science Boyfriends. Aside from having the best ship name ever, Science Boyfriends, aka Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, is actually a pretty fitting title. The two are the scientific experts on the team, prior to Shuri making her debut in Black Panther and putting their work to shame in Infinity War though. The duo work together often to tackle major problems together by combining their intellects. And yeah, knowledge is pretty damn sexy, so no wonder Science Boyfriends is one of the more popular pairings out there on the interwebs. Plus, let's not forget the great scene in Age of Ultron where Tony dons his Hulkbuster suit to try to tame an out-of-control Hulk. And if you take that in the context of their ship, it's kind of like the cutest thing ever. And at number 5, CLINTASHA. Ugh. Clint Barton and Natasha Romanoff are a clear shipping choice. The two have a long history with one another, with both of them trusting each other immensely. Natasha denies the two have something romantically going on, but shippers often consider that as part of the fanon, stating that she's in denial about her own feelings. Fans even noticed that she was wearing an arrow necklace in the Winter Soldier film. While in the MCU, it's incredibly unlikely that the couple will ever be a thing, considering Clint has an adorable family which was revealed in Age of Ultron, the two at least have one of the best friendships in the movies. And I mean, they previously hooked up, so there's something there. And it's hard not to love it when both of them share the screen together regardless. And at number 4, we have STEGGY. STEGGY is the relationship that could have been. Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter are each other's the one that got away. Steve was frozen, returning decades later after Peggy had lived quite the long life, making the moment when they reunite all that more gut-wrenching. And when Peggy passes in Civil War, it's hard not to shed a tear. Steve loved her dearly, and she loved him, although him moving on to her great niece Sharon Carter was kinda, well, a little weird. Up next, number 3, STONY. Steve Rogers and Tony Stark have one of the most complex and interesting relationships in the MCU. Just take a look at any of their scenes together in Civil War. Having different perspectives often makes them rivals, but deep down the two care a lot about one another, and their ability to work together in a team is obviously undeniable. While we didn't get to see them reunited in Infinity War, there's still hope for them in the future. But oh man, that scene where Tony is about to call Steve, but then doesn't, is just like, gut puncher. A relationship between these two isn't entirely unheard of in the comics either. Sort of, that is. On Earth 3490, Cap is romantically linked with that Earth's Iron Man, also known as Iron Woman, Natasha Stark. Slightly defeats the purpose of the MCU ship if the genders are swapped though. The Civil War storyline went down a little differently on that Earth too, needless to say. It actually never happened, because they just resolved their differences in the bedroom. In addition to that, moving back to the male versions of both of the characters, the two are part of another great ship known as the Super Family, a family ship between Steve, Tony, and Peter Parker, where they've adopted young Peter and raised him together. Up next, number 2, Scarlet Widow. Scarlet Widow is the femme/pairing of Black Widow and Scarlet Witch, and is definitely not to be confused with the Superman villain who appeared in his 1945 radio show, although I don't really see how you could confuse them. Scarlet Widow and female ships in general when it comes to the Avengers isn't overly apparent. You don't see nearly as much of it as you do on the interwebs as you do with the slash ships and the regular ships. That being said, once you scratch the surface, there's a whole lot of fanfic written for this pairing. And hey, it makes sense. Black Widow is a calculating and often cold assassin, and Wanda, in her earlier appearances in the MCU, is wickedly powerful but emotionally unstable. The two are pretty opposite personality-wise, and the only ladies on the team. Plus, Scarlett Johansson and Elizabeth Olsen did this photo shoot together, and this is how Scarlet Widow fans took it. Yeah, that's pretty great. Despite the two characters having romantic ties in the films with other characters, Bruce Banner and Vision, those who ship Scarlet Widow are still pretty adamant, even if the pair may only ever be realized in fanfic stories. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Stucky. Stucky is the slash pairing between Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, and is perhaps the most popular of Avengers ships. There's a whole lot of evidence here for fans to delve into. Bucky and Steve have always been partners in justice, and despite being separated for decades upon decades, the two still have such a potent connection. And when Bucky returned as the Winter Soldier, Steve was willing to die when trying to reach into Bucky's mind for whatever was left of his best friend. And Steve never gives up on him. I mean, hell, Civil War was further perpetuated because of this relationship with Bucky, with Steve willing to be on his side even if he had killed T'Challa's father, which he didn't, and he was right, thankfully. And spoilers, that moment in Infinity War when Bucky calls out to him and turns to dust, and Steve is just like utterly destroyed. I mean, Bucky is the last remaining part of Steve's past, of his life before Captain America, and even if you don't agree that there's some sort of romantic love brewing there, it's undeniable that Steve loves Bucky dearly, and vice versa. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which couple is your favorite ship? What other ships should we have mentioned in this list? And which ones do you think actually have a fighting chance of happening? Let us know all of your feels in those comments below. If you dug this video, hit that like button. If you want to hang out with us some more, hit subscribe. And don't forget to check out our channel for more videos on not only the MCU, but other fandom ships too. We highly suggest that you start by clicking on the playlist that's flashing on your screen. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all in the next video.